For years, Andy Cohen was celebrated as the golden boy of reality television. His sharp wit, magnetic charm, and calculated ability to stir up drama on Watch What Happens Live cemented his place as the central figure behind Bravo's most iconic shows. He wasn't just a TV host, he became the face of the Real Housewives franchise, a beloved figure who expertly curated the chaos that fans couldn't get enough of. In many ways, he was the puppet master, pulling the strings of the reality TV universe with the kind of precision that only someone of his caliber could. His persona was flawless, smooth, charismatic, and undeniably in control of the narrative. The audience adored him for it, but underneath that carefully constructed persona there were whispers. Quiet voices that began to grow louder over time, each one revealing something much darker than the public ever saw. Whispers about the toxic undercurrent that flowed behind the scenes of his empire, about a workplace culture that thrived not on collaboration or creativity, but on pushing boundaries at the expense of the cast and crew who were supposed to make the magic happen. These whispers weren't just about what happened on camera. They were about what was happening off camera, what was happening to the very people who were creating the drama, the ones who were exploited for entertainment. As the lawsuits and allegations against Andy Cohen and Bravo began to pour in, it became shockingly clear that his influence extended far beyond the role of a host. His power wasn't just about managing reality TV shows, he was the mastermind behind a toxic, manipulative environment. In this environment, fame, fortune, and drama were valued above all else, even human decency. The very people who built Andy's empire were treated as pawns in a game designed to keep the ratings up and the drama flowing. One of the most chilling revelations came from Lee McSweeney's lawsuit, a stark portrayal of Bravo's treatment of its cast members, especially those who struggled with personal issues. Lee's journey was not just about her sobriety, though that was a central part of her story. What the lawsuit revealed was far darker than anyone had imagined. The lengths to which producers would go to manipulate their cast members, the psychological toll they inflicted, and the devastating consequences of putting entertainment above human well-being. Lee McSweeney, known for her bold and unfiltered personality, had been upfront about her struggles with alcohol addiction. Before filming began, she disclosed her condition to the producers, trusting them to understand her journey and to support her sobriety. She was clear in her request: she needed a healthy, supportive environment to continue her recovery while working on the show. But what she encountered was something entirely different. Instead of receiving the support she so desperately needed, Lee found herself in a system that exploited her vulnerability for entertainment value. The very people who were supposed to offer her understanding and compassion, those who were supposed to protect her, allegedly pressured her to drink, pushing her into situations that were damaging not only to her sobriety but to her emotional and mental health. Producers allegedly viewed her struggle not as a personal journey but as a storyline, one that could create the kind of drama Bravo's viewers craved. They didn't see Lee's health or well-being as a priority. They saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. Lee's experiences were not unique, but they highlighted the darkest corners of the reality TV world, where the personal lives of cast members were no longer their own. They became commodities to be used and manipulated for the sake of drama. The producers, instead of accommodating Lee's sobriety, reportedly pushed her to drink, knowing that her vulnerability could drive ratings. Instead of protecting her mental health, they exploited it. Instead of encouraging her healing, they fueled her potential relapse. Knowing it would make for great television, her story wasn't just about alcohol, it was about the emotional toll that this toxic work culture took on her. It was about how the producers saw her as a tool for their success, not a person with real struggles and real needs. They pushed her to the edge, manipulating her for the sake of ratings, while she tried desperately to maintain some semblance of control over her life. In the process, they turned her fight for sobriety into a spectacle, one that no one asked for and no one should have been forced to endure. Lee's bravery in speaking out and filing her lawsuit was a direct challenge to the system that had exploited her and countless others. Her story has become a symbol of what happens when those in power place their own success above the well-being of those who help create that success. It's a stark reminder of the toxic culture that can flourish in an industry that thrives on chaos and conflict, often at the cost of its employees' dignity and mental health. What's even more disturbing is the fact that this pattern of exploitation didn't end with Lee. It was systemic. It was embedded within the very fabric of Bravo's approach to reality television. And it's something that for too long was hidden beneath the glitz, the glam, and the drama that viewers tuned in for each week. As the filming continued, Lee McSweeney's personal struggles quickly became more than just a backdrop to the drama. It became the centerpiece of the show. The producers, driven by the unrelenting pursuit of the next viral moment, knew exactly how to manipulate her situation for maximum effect. They allegedly understood the delicate nature of Lee's recovery, and rather than offering the support she so desperately needed, they pushed her further into a corner. They knew her breaking point. They saw her vulnerability as a goldmine. And when Lee eventually faltered, they didn't offer a hand to help her back up. They turned her fall into content. They filmed it, they edited it, and they made sure it was packaged perfectly for their audience to consume without a second thought. Hurricane Lee, the infamous episode where Lee relapsed, became a ratings triumph for Bravo. What should have been a moment of empathy and understanding turned into a glorified spectacle of pain. The The producers, fully aware of the emotional toll Lee was under, saw her breakdown as a powerful moment for their show's narrative. The success of that episode marked a turning point, one where it seemed the producers realized that Lee's pain, her vulnerability, her struggles could be monetized. In the twisted logic of reality TV, they had created the perfect storm. It was a delicate mix of drama, vulnerability, and the desperate need for validation that kept viewers glued to their screens. But here's the most disturbing part: they didn't stop there. Instead of offering any support or showing genuine concern for Lee's sobriety, the producers doubled down. They continued to push Lee further, telling her that her personality was better when she was drinking. This wasn't just about drinking anymore, it was about controlling the narrative. They didn't care if it hurt her, they cared about what made good television. Lee's personal journey, her struggles with sobriety, were no longer her own. They were part of the spectacle, part of the manufactured drama designed to keep audiences watching. The producers weren't interested in Lee as a person, they were interested in her as content. As the seasons passed, this toxic culture continued to fester and thrive. There were no checks or balances in place to stop the exploitation. The environment, instead of being supportive, became a pressure cooker, one that continually tried to break Lee down for the sake of entertainment. The producers, it seemed, were hell-bent on encouraging Lee to drink. Every time she tried to maintain her sobriety, they allegedly mocked her. They ridiculed her attempts to stay sober, as if her commitment to her own health and well-being was something to be laughed at, something that didn't fit the mold they wanted to create. Lee's lawsuit claims that far from supporting her recovery, the producers actively worked to sabotage her sobriety. When Lee tried to hold on to her resolve during Real Housewives of New York City Season 13, the producers allegedly told her to lighten up and have more fun. These were not just casual suggestions, they were calculated efforts to undermine Lee's attempts to remain sober. The producers, knowing that a drunk and chaotic Lee was far more entertaining than one who was committed to her recovery, made it clear that they wanted her back in the mess, back in the drama. Their idea of fun was Lee falling back into the destructive patterns that they knew would create better television, but the emotional manipulation didn't stop there. The producers reportedly went even further, mocking Lee's decision to be sober. They allegedly said things like, "You're not the Lee we know and love when you're sober." These comments were not just cruel, they were a direct attempt to devalue Lee as a person. The message was clear: they didn't want the real Lee. They wanted the Lee who drank, who fought, who was part of the chaos that kept viewers tuning in week after week. The Lee who was working on herself, on her recovery. Well, that Lee didn't fit the narrative. That Lee was inconvenient. This entire process was an exercise in exploitation, one that turned Lee's very personal and private battles into a commodity. Her struggles with addiction, which should have been treated with compassion, were instead turned into drama, into spectacle. The producers didn't care about Lee's well-being, they cared about how her pain could fuel the show's success. Her personal journey wasn't about healing, it was about creating content. And when she couldn't give them what they wanted, they made her feel like she wasn't good enough, like she wasn't entertaining unless she was in turmoil. It was a manipulation of the highest order, one that twisted Lee's own struggles into something that could be monetized and exploited for entertainment. In the end, Lee wasn't just a cast member, she was a pawn in a larger game, a game where the producers played with her health, her sobriety, and age. Her emotions, all in the name of ratings and profit. This wasn't just about drama on a reality show, it was about the exploitation of a real person. And while Lee's story is a heartbreaking example, it is far from unique in the world of reality television. Too often, those who are given a platform to share their personal stories end up being exploited for the sake of entertainment, sacrificing their well-being for the almighty dollar. As Lee continues her legal battle, her story serves as a stark reminder of the lengths to which those in power will go to create the next big moment, the next viral clip. But at what cost? Lee's fight for her sobriety, for her dignity, and for her well-being became just another storyline to be consumed by an audience hungry for drama. And in that hunger, the people behind the camera, including Andy Cohen, were complicit in turning Lee's pain into profit. Just days before Lee McSweeney filed her explosive lawsuit, another Real Housewives alum, Brandi Glanville, came forward with her own set of shocking allegations against Andy Cohen. Brandi, a fixture in the Real Housewives universe for years, had once considered Andy a friend and mentor. However, her personal experience with him left her deeply disturbed and questioning the very nature of their relationship. In February 2024, Brandi's attorneys sent a formal letter to NBC Universal, Warner Bros. Discovery, and Shed Media, accusing Andy Cohen of sexual harassment. The letter detailed an incident that occurred in 2022, an incident that not only crossed professional boundaries but blurred the lines between what was acceptable and what was clearly a gross abuse of power. Brandi's lawsuit revealed that Andy allegedly sent her a video while he was visibly intoxicated, making inappropriate and boastful comments. In the video, Andy allegedly claimed he wanted to sleep with another Bravo star, Kate Chastain, from below deck while fantasizing about Brandi. He invited Brandi to watch him and Kate engage in sexual activity over FaceTime. The very concept of an employer sending such an inappropriate, drunken video to an employee is deeply disturbing. It was not just unprofessional, it was a clear and egregious abuse of power. The power imbalance at play here was overwhelming. Brandy was not just an employee, she was a vulnerable individual at the mercy of Andy's influence, someone who was attempting to make her way in the world of reality television. And instead of providing mentorship or support, Andy allegedly used his position to manipulate and control her. When Brandy's legal team confronted Andy about the video, Andy attempted to downplay the situation, calling it a joke and insisting that Brandy was in on it. He seemed to dismiss the entire matter as a harmless prank, attempting to minimize the gravity of his actions. But Brandy's legal team wasn't having it. They argued that what happened was far from a joke. It was a calculated and deliberate abuse of power, an attempt to manipulate and coerce Brandy into participating in a sexualized scenario that was clearly inappropriate and abusive. The power dynamic at play here was undeniable. Andy, a top-tier executive with significant influence over Brandy's career, used that power not just to foster a working relationship, but to manipulate and control her personal boundaries. Brandy was, according to her lawsuit, nothing more than a pawn in Andy's game, a game where boundaries were non-existent and his desires took priority over everything else. But the allegations didn't end there. As if the video incident wasn't disturbing enough, Brandy's lawsuit also claimed that Andy had pressured her to sleep with multiple men, including his stage manager and Southern Charm star Austin Kroll. Brandy's testimony suggested that Andy wasn't merely using his position to satisfy his own sexual desires. He was allegedly manipulating her to engage in sexual acts with men he couldn't have himself. His actions seemed to be a strategic maneuver to assert dominance, control the women around him, and wield his power in ways that were nothing short of exploitative. Brandy's claims shed a disturbing light on the kind of power dynamics that allegedly ran rampant behind the scenes of the Bravo empire. In Andy Cohen's world, it seemed that nothing was off-limits if it helped create drama, fueled ratings, or maintained his control over those involved in his shows. His empire was built on pushing boundaries, on exploiting the vulnerabilities of cast members, and using those vulnerabilities to create the kind of salacious, conflict-driven television that Bravo was known for. It was a system that thrived on chaos that was crafted at the expense of the very people who helped make Bravo the network it is today. This pattern of behavior wasn't just a one-off. It was part of a broader culture that ran through Andy's shows, a culture that valued ratings and drama over respect, boundaries, and decency. The people who worked with Andy weren't seen as individuals with lives and struggles. They were seen as pawns to be used in a never-ending game of reality TV, one where the only thing that mattered was creating the next big moment, the next viral scandal. Perhaps one of the most disturbing allegations to come to light was the claim that Andy Cohen not only turned a blind eye to substance abuse in the Real Housewives franchise, but actively promoted a workplace culture where drug and alcohol use was not only tolerated but encouraged. According to Lee McSweeney's lawsuit, Andy allegedly used cocaine with cast members, contributing to an atmosphere where substance abuse became a normalized part of the job. This wasn't a one-time, isolated event. According to the claims, it was part of a broader, systematic problem that permeated the entire Bravo network. The lawsuit paints a grim picture of a toxic work culture, one in which producers and executives, including Andy, pushed a narrative where the chaos created by alcohol and drug consumption was valued more than the health and well-being of the cast members. The lawsuit claims that those who indulged in drugs and alcohol were given preferential treatment. These individuals received more screen time, better edits, and in some cases, even more favorable working conditions, essentially rewarding destructive behavior while punishing those who sought to maintain control over their lives. This culture didn't simply exploit the cast for entertainment purposes. It turned substance abuse into a tool of control. Those who participated in the excesses of the lifestyle Bravo was promoting were able to thrive in the spotlight, while those who resisted were sidelined, ignored, or criticized. Lee's lawsuit didn't just accuse Andy of turning a blind eye, it suggested he was actively complicit, using substance abuse as a method of creating drama to maintain control over his empire. The manipulation was chilling. It wasn't just about allowing toxic behavior to exist. It was about using it as a weapon to ensure the drama never stopped, the ratings never dipped, and the show's success never faltered. Behind every lawsuit and every shocking revelation about Andy's behavior lies the emotional toll on the cast members who were exploited for entertainment. These weren't just people on television, they were human beings, many of whom were struggling with real personal demons and mental health issues. But Bravo, under Andy's leadership, didn't treat them as people with complex lives. They were reduced to commodities, tools to be used, manipulated, and discarded when they no longer fit the network's narrative or interests. One of the most heartbreaking examples of this came from Vicki Gunvalson, a veteran of the Real Housewives franchise. Vicki recalled one of the most traumatic moments of her career, the day she learned of her mother's death while filming. According to Vicki, producers and Andy were aware of her mother's passing, but instead of offering her the compassion and support she desperately needed, they chose to withhold the information and film her reaction. They turned her grief, her personal loss, into nothing more than television gold. What should have been a private, deeply painful moment was instead used as content to drive up ratings. This decision wasn't just callous, it was heartless. It showed a complete lack of regard for Vicki as a person. She wasn't a grieving daughter in that moment, she was a cast member, a tool to drive the next dramatic moment. Vicky has stated publicly that she will never forgive Bravo for making that choice. The pain of losing her mother was compounded by the emotional exploitation she faced, turning her heartbreak into an episode that would be dissected by millions of viewers. As the lawsuits against Andy Cohen and Bravo continued to pile up, the reality of the toxic culture that had been cultivated under his leadership could no longer be ignored. Some of Andy's former colleagues began speaking out, voicing their own frustrations with the system that allowed such exploitation to happen. Among the most vocal critics was Bethany Frankel, a former close friend of Andy's, who had long been a staple of the Real Housewives universe. In 2023, Bethany launched a campaign to expose the exploitation of reality stars, urging for greater protections and calling for unionization within the industry. Her campaign was a direct response to what she saw as the deeply ingrained issues in the way Bravo, and by extension, Andy Cohen, treated its cast members. Bethany was outspoken in her belief that reality stars were being pushed to their limits, subjected to unhealthy and unsafe working conditions, and then left to deal with the fallout without the support they so desperately needed. She called for better mental health support, health insurance, and fair compensation for the stars who helped build Bravo into the powerhouse it was today. Bethany's campaign wasn't just about a personal vendetta, it was about systemic change. It was about changing the culture of reality television, where exploitation and manipulation were considered normal practices in the pursuit of drama. Andy Cohen, who had built his empire on these very PR principles, was suddenly confronted with a forceful challenge that questioned the foundation of the system he had worked so hard to maintain. But instead of acknowledging the legitimate concerns raised by Bethany and others, Andy remained defensive. He brushed off the calls for change, emphasizing how much the Real Housewives franchise had given to the cast members, highlighting their newfound celebrity and businesses launched thanks to their time on the show. For him, the success of the franchise, the ratings, the celebrity power it created seemed to outweigh the personal toll it took on those who made it all possible. This stance demonstrated Andy's reluctance to confront the dark side of reality TV. His empire, built on the exploitation of its stars, was under threat, and he wasn't ready to change it. Instead, he doubled down, portraying himself as the victim of an unfair attack rather than taking responsibility for the toxic culture he had helped create. His refusal to acknowledge the reality of the situation not only alienated former allies like Bethany, but reinforced the notion that the cost of entertainment was the emotional and mental well-being of those involved in creating it. Bethany Frankel's Reality Reckoning campaign was a direct challenge to Andy Cohen's empire, and it rattled the foundations of the world he had built. Bethany, who had once been a close ally, became one of the most vocal critics of the reality television industry, and specifically of the toxic culture perpetuated by Bravo. Instead of acknowledging the legitimacy of Bethany's concerns, Andy Cohen defensively downplayed the accusations, dismissing them as baseless. He turned the conversation back to how much the cast members had benefited from the platform Bravo had provided. According to Andy, the Real Housewives franchise had transformed these women's lives, helping them achieve fame, build businesses, and create opportunities that would have otherwise been out of reach. But Andy's response was telling. It reflected a much larger pattern of behavior that had come to define his approach to the empire he had created. Instead of taking responsibility for the harm his empire had caused, he chose to shift the blame, positioning himself as the victim of an unfair attack. He painted himself as the benevolent force behind Bravo's success, claiming that any criticisms were simply attacks on the platform that had given cast members so much. This dismissive, defensive stance ignored the fact that for many of those cast members, the success they enjoyed came at an immense personal cost. Andy Cohen's legacy will forever be intertwined with the Real Housewives franchise, the show that helped him build an empire worth over $50 million. His name became synonymous with the drama, the luxury, and the emotional chaos that characterized Bravo's flagship shows. But as more and more allegations surface, it's becoming increasingly clear that this empire wasn't built on the foundation of creativity and entertainment. It was built on the backs of those who were exploited for the sake of entertainment. From alcohol exploitation to sexual harassment, from encouraging drug use to enabling toxic behavior, Andy's empire thrived on creating conflict, manipulating emotions, and profiting from the pain and struggles of his cast members. These women were not just actors in a scripted drama. They were real people, many of whom were dealing with deep personal struggles, mental health issues, and addictions. Yet instead of offering them support, Bravo's producers, under Andy's leadership, allegedly pushed them into the chaos that would make for better television. In a world where conflict and drama were king, the human cost was disregarded. For all of his claims of being the mastermind behind reality TV, the person who changed the game, it's becoming evident that Andy Cohen's empire was never truly about entertainment. It was about exploiting human lives for the sake of ratings. It was about manipulating people into destructive situations, pushing their limits for the public's amusement, and profiting from their vulnerability. It's a harsh but necessary truth. Andy's vision for reality TV wasn't about storytelling, it was about turning real-life pain and struggles into profitable drama. The dark side of Andy Cohen's reign over the Real Housewives and Watch What Happens Live is no longer a secret. The cracks in the facade are widening and the truth is coming out one lawsuit, one story at a time. But while the allegations against him and Bravo are gaining more attention, the empire continues to thrive. The question that lingers, though, is how many more stories will be revealed? How many more cast members will come forward to share their truth and expose the exploitation they faced in order to entertain millions? And most importantly, when will the reckoning truly begin? For too long, the world of reality television has been allowed to operate without the kind of scrutiny that other industries face. Behind the glossy surface of fame, luxury, and drama lies a system that thrives on exploiting its talent. The story of Andy Cohen and the Real Housewives franchise is not just about one man. It's about a broken system that continues to profit from the emotional and personal toll it takes on those it employs. As the stories continue to come to light, the question remains: when will it all come crashing down, and when will those who have been exploited for entertainment finally get the justice they deserve?